Everyone, today we're going to look at 4 basic watercolor techniques. The very first 4, the most basic. We'll eventually look at 9 different techniques, and on your vocab sheet you can see that there are 9 listed. But today I just want to introduce 4 and then have you play with them. So 4 basic watercolor techniques: wash, wet on wet, dry brush, and salt. So taking a look at this image, I'm wondering if you can find any of those techniques that you might guess are used here. Let me go ahead and say them again. Wash, wet on wet, dry brush, and salt. All right, let's keep going. And we'll come back to that. A wash is a transparent area of watercolor. The beauty of watercolor is just gorgeous, transparent layers of color. And what that means is that you're putting a lot of water and very little watercolor into your mix. Wet on wet is just adding washes onto washes onto washes so that you get blobs of watercolor. You wet your surface first, and then you drop washes in. And these blobs are really considered really quite gorgeous in watercolor. All right, let's go back. See if you find any washes and wet on wet in this picture. I can definitely see some washes in here, this whole area. These are all transparent watercolor washes. Okay, let's keep going. Here's some other examples of washes and wet on wet. And if you look at these pairs, they're beautiful examples of wet on wet. The next example of a technique that you're going to try today is dry brush. And what that means is that you're going to put actual watercolor without a lot of water onto your brush. You're going to take it and drag it on a piece of paper, and then when you start seeing the dry brush, the brush strokes themselves, you go ahead and apply that to your work of art. So the artist here has used that dry brush to create textures on the trees. This particular artist has used textures in the background to create dry brush. So let's go back and see if we can find any dry brush here. Anybody see any? If you take a look on this tree, the artist has dragged and actually let some of the brush strokes show. Right there, there's an example of dry brush. All right, third technique, throwing salt. I'm sorry, fourth technique. Fourth technique is throwing salt into your washes or pools of watercolor. And a warning, your washes have to be quite wet and you have to throw quite a bit of salt in. And you get these wonderful techniques like you can see here. All of this is created using salt. This is probably a more dramatic example of using salt and throwing it into the watercolor and letting the salt suck up. Basically, the salt sucks up the watercolor. And then you let it dry for a day, and you go ahead and then brush the salt off the following day or as soon as it dries. Here they are. I want you to review them. Look on your vocab sheet, and you should see these first 4 techniques. Wash, wet on wet, dry brush, salt. Next, I'm going to do a demonstration, and then I want you to try it.